So, next speaker will be Mr. David Ongo. Mr. David Ongo is from the, it says regional center, but RCMRD, yeah? Okay. Okay. All right, so karibu.
So, hello, good afternoon. My name is David Ongo. I work with the Regional Center for Mapping of Resources for Development. I know it's a mouthful, but that's where we are. I'll be presenting on this particular topic, that is the trending issues into the future of natural resource management using the Earth observation. So allow me to use this one. Yeah, so I'd like to point out that, first of all, this is a very wide area for me to present. It doesn't have a specific way in which it can be done, but I'm going to try to beat my sister Faith's time to make sure maybe I've done it in 5 minutes. So let's see. So a little bit about myself, not so much, but I've been quite in the field for a while now. My background is in geography, Moi University, then MSc Earth Observation and GIS from University of Twente. So I work with the Regional Center for Mapping of Resources for Development. We are based in Kasarani. The organization, as earlier said by the Director General, we were established in the 1975 by the UNECA and OAU. We are serving about 20 member states, both contracting and contracting. Yeah, so natural assets or raw materials occurring in nature that can be used for economic production or consumption. That is what natural resources are in a nutshell. And most of them can either be renewable or non-renewable, as can be seen. Okay. They're quite variety from animal resources, wind, oil, and other mineral resources, soil, coal, forest resources has already been presented by my sister Faith, water resources, solar energy. So there are quite a lot. And anything that can be seen by the satellite can also be monitored here. So just to give you a glimpse of how useful some of the resources that we're having. That's a mobile phone. This is an image from Al Jazeera with depiction of some of the items that can be used to make it. From the mobile body, we have aluminum and titanium. Circuit board, we have copper and silicon. We have tanzanite as well. The battery. All of them, I believe most of you are having them either in your pocket, the mobile phones, and all as a result of the resources that we want to talk about. Other benefits, we have the pharmaceutical. We are in somewhere around the world where we have a lot of tropical forest. And within the tropical forest, we're having a lot of pharmaceutical activities that are taking place, especially when it comes to medicine. We're recreational. We have, for the guys who are not within Nairobi, you can visit the Nairobi National Park to have a feel of the recreational value that the natural resources provide to us. We have the industrial, food resources, energy, and also, I like not to talk so much about being the source of conflict. So just to reiterate the importance of Earth observation in monitoring some of these important resources, you can find them within the Agenda 2063 of AU as well as the UN SDGs. And you'll be able to find so many other ways in which the application of Earth observation can be explored. So some of the case studies that I like just to brush through, I'll not talk about the forest that Faith has already talked about, but on the far left upper side we're having, that is Lake Naivasha. And Lake Naivasha has been having, not just Lake Naivasha, but most of the Great Rift Valley lakes, most of them have been expanding. And one good case is both Lake Naivasha and Lake Nakuru. If the case continues, then we are most likely going to have some biodiversity or ecosystem catastrophe. On the image at the center is for air quality, and that is the Nairobi Metropolitan. We were trying to use Sentinel-5P to have a look at few parameters related to air quality, from NOxes, SOx, particulate matter. On the far left, that is the crop mask. That's something that has already been talked about by Dr. Nakalembe and the rest of the team that was previously here. But these are just few areas. Within Kenya, we've done activities related to forest resources mapping in Mau, water resources, the Great Rift Valley lakes, mining from prospecting all the way to monitoring how that particular resource, the closure of the mines, that is, air quality both in Addis Ababa, Nairobi, as well as Dar es Salaam. For land administration, I believe we have Visasa and participants who took part in coming up with that, as well as rangelands. So the challenges that we are currently having are multifaceted. Some people talk about data, and for that, I'll just pose a question. Are we having too much data? Do we have so much information that currently we don't know how to work around it? Or within data, is it the issue of the quality? A lot of things have already been mentioned about in-situ data and AI and machine learning, so I'll not dwell so much in that. But data is one of the challenges that we are experiencing right now, and it is not just satellite data. We have to understand that other than that particular data, we need other social data sets that are very important in making sense of some of the activities that we do related to natural resource monitoring. The skill set, I like to talk about the academia, some sort of disjoint between the academia and the practitioners, especially here, where the field could be changing too fast than what the academia can be able to produce for us. The kind of skill sets currently we are looking for in the job market are not the same that we had the past 10 years ago. So are we ready in relation to the amount of data coming up, the amount of skill set that is coming up, and how much this, the field is changing? Then I like to go to hardware and software. This is related to disparity in infrastructures. Other countries are way, way above, while if you go to some other countries, this sort of like internet connectivity is very hard to get in order to explore some other resources that can help you utilize the EO. Then on policy, we have the National Space Agency and the operational NSDI. Some countries are far ahead. For example, SANSA, which is very far. Kenya, we've just started, I believe, we will be at par. Just to show what I'm talking about, I believe Landsat Next is having quite different sets of data sets, an additional amount of spectral information that can be harnessed for some of the activities that we're looking for in the future. But if you are not ready to utilize all that information, I think we will be misusing, rather not getting the benefits that we are looking for in this case. So going forward, just to show you Landsat missions since 1972 to maybe in the next few years having Landsat Next, and then the Copernicus missions all the way to 2030 are all coming up with new data sets just to make sure that we continue monitoring our natural resources. But again, we need to balance. We have to strike a balance between the programs that are being done continentally, as well as those, cascade them to national programs, then have this complementarity. There are so many people around this particular room probably just dealing with one aspect, forest monitoring. And we are so disjointed that we are not sure who is doing what at what particular time. Then we need to strengthen some of the institutions as well as data infrastructure and human capital in order to move a little bit forward. So you can get more information about some of the presentation and some of the aspects that I've done, that we've done as RCMRD, as well as the Digital Earth Africa. Thank you so much. How have I done?
Actually, if we round off to the nearest whole number, I don't know if there'll be any difference between the two timings of the two presentations. Thank you very much for that. So our speakers for today will be joined by some panelists. These panelists, I would request them to join us on stage. And that is, the first person will be Miss Lucy Warwenge.
And biodiversity data management tools and products for decision making. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, as you have been already told, I'm Joseph Mukeka. I work with the Wildlife Research and Training Institute. For those of you who are new, or even Kenyans themselves, Wildlife Research and Training Institute is a new institution that has been cloned from the Kenya Wildlife Service. So the institute is not more than 1 year old. We started operating last year, July, and we are still in transition. I'm a principal research scientist. My interests are in GIS, remote sensing, landscape ecology, and I also have a lot of interest in conservation biology, wildlife population dynamics, and so forth. Thank you. Pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Willie Simons. I'm the Managing Director of Spatiality. It's a private company that deals with big data, location analytics. Well, anyway, that's the intention. But, you know, opportunities have not been too many. I think it's been challenging to operate in a private business in Kenya. So I think I spend a lot of my time on learning new things. So luckily, I'm in a field where, you know, there's always something new. So I spend quite a bit of my time, you know, machine learning and Python. So keeps me happy all day. The question is, well, I think I've been in the industry for many, many years. I came here in the mid-90s, 94. And I think I've been involved in, you know, the distribution of software. I think that's what people might know me for. Too expensive software. But I think before that I was trained as a soil scientist in the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. But you know, who cares about soils, right? I was looking at soil degradation. Now nobody seemed to be bothered. I think that's still the problem you're facing today. Who's bothered about natural resources?
True.
So hopefully we can make some headway in this session.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Yeah. So I'm sure the management of natural resources is quite a wide area. And I know even if we spend the whole week over here, we might not be able to exhaust. So perhaps we can try and perhaps summarize and give our own experiences. In the experiences that you have summed up over the years, dealing with the natural resources, their management, their conservation, what can you identify as probably the greatest challenge based on your experiences and your working with the management and conservation of natural resources? Perhaps you can start with you, Mr. Mills.
Okay. I think it's been mentioned in the previous session. I think the biggest challenge we have is the stakeholder engagement. And stakeholders, you know, I would like to maybe rephrase that in the term of the end user, because we do stakeholder engagement, but we tend to invite all the government agencies, but I think you actually have to to connect with the people that you're trying to help. And I think that causes the fact that, you know, a lot of the solutions that we are developing, I think they seem to be more technology and data driven than need or user driven, and I think that's a big challenge. But I think there's also a benefit to engaging the users. I think they need to be involved from the onset. And I think it's also been mentioned, particularly in Earth observation, you know, you have eyes in the skies, but you also need eyes on the ground. And again, the information that you collect, I think is to be used for decision making, planning, I don't know what. You know, we have this idea of, yes, there is the Earth, but you also need to change the actions and the behavior of the actors, which, you know, tends to be the people on the ground. So yes, I mean, even if it comes to ground truthing, you know, well, you can use your own style, I don't mind, but that is an opportunity now to start engaging with, the local communities. Why do we need trees anyways? I think it's important.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think basically you are talking about the challenges as based from my experience. I've been in the wildlife conservation for at least around 20 years. And I think there are others who have been in the field longer than I have been. But however, natural resources is actually very broad. And for my response, definitely I have to be biased towards wildlife management. What have been the issues? What has actually been happening? And some of the main issues actually rotate around increasing human population and climate change. Yeah, the issue of increasing human population with regard to habitat, the space that wildlife use, that they want to utilize, the resources, the food, the water, the space is actually contracting. A very good example is when I joined Kenya Wildlife Service way back in 2001, just next to Nairobi, at the Kapiti, you would be able to see zebras, imbalas, all sorts of ungulates. Today is not possible to see that. This has been because of urban sprawl. Nairobi city is growing. There is quite a lot of immigration of people from rural areas trying to look for more land to settle. There are also coming up industries and so forth. So what is likely happening on the conservation arena right now with increasing human population is we are having a reduction in the wildlife habitat. And when you reduce wildlife habitat, what really happens is that the numbers of wildlife will go down. With regard to, we know that tourism earns about 10% of the GDP. That's the estimate as per KNBS, Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. And this is likely to impact Kenya negatively. So we've been witnessing a lot of competition from agriculture. I know my colleagues really talked about agriculture. And agriculture is a land use. Wildlife conservation is a land use. Forest conservation is a land use. And all these are land uses, but they are competing. The issue comes in, which is more enterprising of these land uses. Is it agriculture? Is it wildlife conservation? And that is now where wildlife conservation started facing very, very, very grievous challenges. We've seen contraction in wildlife range. We know that wherever you find wildlife, most of those areas are also very good for agricultural production. A good example is Masai Mara, where we have wild beasts coming from Tanzania during the Great Migration, is where people want to plant their wheat. So right now, Kenya does not support conservative utilization of wildlife. You cannot crop your wildlife as you used to do way back before 2004. And the question is, whose wildlife is it? So we are facing challenges because wildlife requires space, and this space is also required by other enterprising land uses like agriculture, livestock production, and so forth. I think climate change has been talked about quite a lot. Right now, I think from agriculture we have a notice that this year we are not going to get a lot of rainfall. If we don't have rain, it does not only affect agriculture, it also affects our wildlife. Our wildlife will die, and there is likely going to be increased human-wildlife conflicts. I think the challenges posed by, the challenges that I've seen so far with regard to wildlife conservation are actually quite diverse. And I think one of my greatest colleagues can actually allude to that. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. I think to add to what our colleagues have said, I'd just like to highlight 2 points with regard to the challenges of natural resource management. One is unsustainable exploitation, that we are taking from the earth more than we can sustainably continue to extract if we're to have enough, not only for our generation, but also for generations to come. But that is also coupled with our land governance arrangements. So when you have people who determine to undertake a certain land use for their own livelihood or for commercial enterprise, over time we're undertaking activities on units of land that are not the optimum size to undertake that exercise. So if I take, for an example, pastoralism, I saw in the study from KFS, Kenya has 70% grasslands. Kenya is 2/3 rangelands. And so most of our pastoral livestock economy is in that 2/3 rangeland. Yet you look at our current land practice, we're subdividing land into 20 acres, 8 acres in those rangelands. And those are not units in and of themselves, if they are fenced, that can sustain pastoralism in the rangelands, that needs mobility, that needs access to dry season refuge grazing areas, that needs areas for dispersal in the wet season. So our land governance practice on the ground does not match our optimum sustainable land use for different types of land uses. And so there's a great disconnect as people aspire to improve their livelihoods and undertake what seems suitable to them at the time. It's either done at an inappropriate scale because that's just the land they have, or it's not the optimum land use for that area. And so we end up suffering from what we read as the tyranny of small decisions. There are many independent small decisions being made on land use instead of looking at broadly, if we were to zone areas for their optimum value, what land arrangements then do we have? In some areas, communal land arrangements for governance, not for ownership. You can own individually, but you can govern communally. But those are areas I think in this country we need to explore more so that we're not left to every individual needing to make a decision on the natural resource that's on their land as if their action does not impact another natural resource upstream or downstream. So I think that whole fragmentation and overexploitation has created a huge challenge on natural resource management. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to say we have to protect our land. And land is finite. We cannot create any more land than what we already have. We have boundaries, and whatever amount of land we are currently having has to be protected. Case in point is the opportunity, I call it opportunity cost, within the township. Well, like what Dr. Lucy Warungi just mentioned, people prefer setting up that kind of land is very fertile and can be used for a variety of so many other uses. The first panel that was here was talking about food security. So how can we talk about food security yet the most finite resource that we have is currently being used for a totally different use, in this case real estate. Yet we have other areas that we can actually set up those kind of land uses. So the only thing that we need to do is, back again, land policy, land laws. So my second point in relation to natural resources management, I think we need to find ways of tying the knot, completing the loop. A lot of statistics have been given by our colleague here from KFS on how much forest we have and the target that we're looking for. Can we start planting the trees? Can we actually start finishing? Because we have the statistics, we know where the trees are supposed to be planted. Can we actually do the planting of the trees? If we go to water quality issues, water-related issues, we have lakes are expanding the quality of water is going down, but what else can we do? There are various, there are water specialists that can go into that to close the loop, to make sure that whatever recommendation that comes up from some of these reports is actually closed, and we have something that is tangible. We have urban planners, all professionals that dealing with these, some of these finite resources. The case in point is land here. We have to find ways in which we complete the loop and tie the knot and make sure that whatever resource that we are looking for, we complete it by either the policies or the laws to either govern or upheld whatever is going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Then Ms. Muteri.
Yes, I can. All right. Okay, thank you very much. And my colleagues have already talked about the conversion of land, because I have more bias into the forestry sector, where we have the encroachment also affecting the forestry sector, people going to the forest and also converting that, and it causes a lot of conflict, both for the wildlife and the forestry sector. However, I want to mention something that they have not mentioned, which is the forest fires, which is a challenge, especially in the drylands and also during the dry season, as people move in to look for maybe some honey or something like that. This causes a lot of forest fires in our forest, and of course others. And then also we have a challenge of also the invasive species. As much that we want this to grow and the trees, also we have also the invasive species coming in and also taking over. And the other thing that I would say is also about data. Now, David here, my colleague, asked us whether we have really a lot of data or whether we have no data. Previously, we have said that we don't have data, lack of data as a challenge. But now I think also we have more data, but this data is not in one place. So we have KWS having data, we have KFS having data, we have your institution having data, all this data concerning the forestry sector or a sector in the natural resource management. However, it's not in that one place where everyone is able to access. And if you look at what you have done currently as the Kenya Forest Service, is have that report that you have done put in the website. Let everyone see it, let them use it, the county government, any agency, government agencies, to avoid duplication, and also to know that this thing really exists and it helps others. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I thought it was important that we, since we come from a diverse field, that we get to know the challenges that each one of us is getting. But perhaps I've been reminded quite a number of times about the time. So there has been an evolution in terms of the resolution of the data that we've been having. We've been talking of 90 meters down to 30 meters. Now we are taking up to sub-centimeter data. How is this data, the resolution of this data, assisting in addressing these challenges that have been there, that you've been facing? How is this evolution in the resolution of these data from low resolution to high resolution? How is it aiding in your resolution of these challenges? But perhaps for this, we can take how many? 3 minutes? We'll be safe with 2 minutes. Okay, I think we'll be safe with 2 minutes. So we can start with you, Ms. Waringe. Yeah.
Thank you. I think if we are to ensure we are using data fit for purpose, there's some decisions that don't need high resolution data, but I think the evolution of high resolution data has made it possible to be more precise at the local scale. And I'm thinking here at county level, and county has become our level of operation, or ought to be our strongest level of natural resource management frameworks. And at this point, for the counties that have interrogated and worked on county spatial plans and county integrated development plans, being able to have data that looks at their land use, land cover at scale. We did some work also looking at the degradation index in Kajiado and Masai Mara, using some of the data from the Horn of Africa. So being able to have data that helps make decisions at the appropriate scale of decision makers. In the past, we'd have national data sets, but we wanted decisions at a district level. And that would be difficult because then you're generalizing too much. I've seen here samples of data being, pulling out even different crops. And so I think county level decision making is really being empowered. And that's important for this country. Thank you.
So,
in 2 minutes.
Well, as a professional, I think my appetite for high resolution data is always very high. I'll always prefer working with something that can give me the most and the best possible. So in relation to that, I think the other point that comes again is to get the resolution, I need to go to the ground. So my appetite will always be up. But again, that being said, I concur with what Dr. With fit for purpose sort of information. If it works best at that particular scale, then it's okay. Work with it, provide the information, tie the knot, have the results. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Pachit.
So thank you. Data will answer one big question. What do you have? As Kenya Forest Service, what are you managing? What are you doing? For example, we're asking ourselves, how much tree forest cover do we have? So this answers that question. But also, I will agree with Waruige because it's at different levels. Remember, we are saying that we need to plant more trees to meet the target that His Excellency has put for us. But for us to be able to plant and grow, not just to plant, but we plant and grow the tree, we need to know the status and do the monitoring. However, within the high resolution. But we just need just a status of how we are, then even 10-meter resolution will do. So this is really specific to what exactly we are doing. But the big question is, what do you have and what have you done about it? Should answer all those questions for every institution. Thank you.
Then, Mr. Hilly.
Yeah, I think it depends on the purpose. So if you do want to do land cover mapping, I think, Sentinel or Landsat will do. But if you want to do a habitat suitability monitoring, you need information about vegetation types, so you need higher resolution data. I also want to say, I think David made that point, it's not just about Earth observation data, you need also vector data. Typically you want to aggregate your data to a level that, informs decision making. So you need, and again, it's not just, sometimes, it's too much about, exploratory? Exploratory analysis. So we use Earth observation to find out whether there's a problem. But of course, we already know there's a problem. But I think we have to get more into diagnostics. So what explains the way things are, and that of course becomes part of the solution. So we can start moving from exploratory to diagnostics and predictive. So we would know what to do in order to address these issues.
So thank you. Then finally, Dr. Mukeka.
Hello? Yeah, I think as far as I'm concerned is the higher the better. But of course, we also need to realize that technology is not moving backwards. So we had 30-meter resolution, we had 5-meter resolution, 10-meter resolution. And if the engine has moved from the carburetor, we have now FFI, AFI, it's not possible for us to go back. So ideally, we'll have to deal with what technology is offering us. But however, that does not mean that the one good thing with the Earth observation, especially Landsat and so forth, is that we really can go back. We have data sets for this country since 1970s, 80s, and up to current. The question comes in, do we discount these data sets simply because we are 30-meter resolution or 50-meter resolution? The issue is about what is it really that we are mapping out. Yeah, and we also know that platforms like the drones, their resolution is just like real, it's just like your eye. We are using that to even monitor wildlife. So technology has grown, and then I think for me, is we move forward, but we still cannot discard things that were done 20 years, 30 years ago, simply because probably the resolution was lower. But remember, even when the resolution was lower during that time, the human footprint on Kenya's landscape, or even elsewhere in the world, definitely was not as intensive as it is today. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. Much appreciated. I'm looking at the points that I've been noting, and we can actually spur a debate that can go the whole evening. Eh? But for the interest of time, I will now invite, should I say 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 burning questions to our panelists based on the discussion that has been put across. If it's an issue of time, we still have some time for questions. So don't be worried that there's no time for questions. All right, we have 2.
How have your organizations thought about that particular application?
Probably can make a request. Would it be possible that you direct a question to one of the speakers? Due to time, probably you can direct
I'll invite
to...
a volunteer. I don't know exactly who might have worked on this. So.
All right.
Yeah.
So the question was clear? Please come again then. Please come again then.
My question is on poaching. Have we used, how has Earth observation data been used for that particular problem set? Because it mixes some security elements to that. It's a hard topic. You know, you can't use 10-meter resolution to find poachers, right? You know, so has you found a way to apply existing capabilities to that problem set?
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Ms.
Got to Earth observation and the issue of poaching. We know that poaching poses a very serious threat to wildlife conservation in Kenya, especially for the elephants, for the rhinos, and other equally highly threatened species. What I can say for now is we use there's an effort to use drones right now. Drones are being used by the Kenya Wildlife Service to monitor wildlife, and especially more so in very small protected areas. Drones are also very well being used in some of these conservancies in Laikipia, north of Kenya, where the conservancy is actually very, very small, and they are able to effectively monitor the entire extent of the sanctuary using drones. But however, we also have to realize that sometimes when you want to monitor very large ecosystems like the way we have in the Kenya Wildlife Service, like the Savo ecosystem, sometimes it has not been very possible because the area is very big. It's about over 20,000 square kilometers. But however, there have always been trials. I've seen them in research, and this is something that is really coming up, where there is a use of drones, there is a use of telemetry, either by use of tagging. You can tag the animal, it can produce geolocations which can be sent to a server for geofencing, something like that. I think that is the take I have on it. Thank you.
Highly dependent on biomass, and we know that the kind of the habitat that the animals lives in natural forest, which has the herbaceous, has the shrubs and the indigenous trees. How do you monitor the biomass within those habitat areas using the Earth observation?
Got to Earth observation and the issue of poaching. We know that poaching poses a very serious threat to wildlife conservation in Kenya, especially for the elephants, for the rhinos, and other equally highly threatened species. What I can say for now is we use there's an effort to use drones right now. drones are being used by the Kenya Wildlife Service to monitor wildlife, and especially more so in very small protected areas. The drones are also very well being used in some of these conservancies in Laikipia, north of Kenya, where the conservancy is actually very, very small, and they are able to effectively monitor the entire extent of the sanctuary using drones. But however, we also have to realize that sometimes when you want to monitor very large ecosystems like the way we have in the Kenya Wildlife Service, like the Savo ecosystem, sometimes it has not been very possible because the area is very big. It's about over 20,000 square kilometers. But however, there have always been trials. I've seen them in research, and this is something that is really coming up, where there is a use of drones, there is a use of telemetry, either by use of tagging. You can tag the animal, it can produce geolocations which can be sent to a server for geofencing, something like that. I think that is the take I have on it. Thank you.
Right.
That's we can do surveys, we go into the field, we measure the biomass, either using just the direct methods that we normally use. But however, there are efforts that we use that can be used and applied with Earth observation. For instance, a simple index like NDVI, EVI, those are very simple indices that are being used in remotely sensed data that can actually be used to monitor biomass over time. And you can be able to monitor biomass periodically or phenologically, last year, this year, to compare how the trends in biomass productivity within a protected area or within the habitat where the wildlife are. So Earth observation is one key area where we can be able to use use it to monitor biomass. Indeed, NDVI, EVIs, and other vegetation proxies are normally biomass indicators. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We really appreciate your contributions. I think we have really done justice to this topic, despite the limited time. I'm sure if we had more time, we would have been able to delve deeper into it. But given the time and the circumstances, I really appreciate your experiences, sharing your experiences and your insights into the natural resource management using Earth observation. And before we bring this to a close, I would request, Mark, you have something for our presenters?
For the Kenya Space Expo, please accept this small gift. Thank you. On behalf of the Kenya Space Agency and for the Kenya Space Expo, kindly accept this small token for your time.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. I would request that we give the panelists a round of applause for the job well done. So I'd request you to please take your seats. And thank you so much for... Oh, a photo. Tusitoke mkono mtupu. So everybody goes out with something.
Thank you, Dr. Thiongo, for that very, very informative session.